You know when you go to the supermarket and grab a carton of milk, you always check that expiration date, right? I mean, you gotta make sure it hasn't gone bad. Well, here's a massive question for you. When was the last time you checked the expiration date on your brain? Seriously. The truth is, the traditional advice we've all been spoon-fed about money, relying on a steady paycheck, going to school to get a safe job, it is completely expired. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to completely shift our perspective on what it actually takes to build true wealth in today's world. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Here's our roadmap to systematically dismantle that old, poor mindset and build an entrepreneurial, abundant one. We'll run through the obsolete rules of money, why you need to focus on learning instead of earning, scarcity versus abundance, controlling your cash flow, taking personal responsibility, and finally, the real definition of wealth. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the obsolete rules of money. Right off the bat, we absolutely have to recognize that the rules of the game have completely changed. That core idea of getting a steady paycheck, saving all your pennies, and staying out of debt, it's totally outdated. Actually, a massive shift happened way back in 1971 when the world moved off the gold standard. Money essentially became debt, and that single event made the old playbook completely obsolete. Look at the advice society still pushes on us, and then look at the actual results. We're told to go to school and get a job. Well, that just creates an employee working their tail off to make the boss rich. We're told to save up to buy a house. That creates a debtor making the bank rich. We take out big home loans for tax deductions, which creates a taxpayer funding the government. And then we're encouraged to buy everything on credit, creating a consumer that makes big businesses rich. If you're following this traditional advice, your hard work is literally just a wealth-building engine for everyone else except you. And that brings us to a wildly provocative quote from financial educator Robert Kiyosaki. Savers are losers and cash is trash. Now, no way around it, that sounds extreme. But think about it for a second. Because governments are constantly printing money, inflation quietly eats away at the purchasing power of the cash you've been stashing under the mattress. So while the average person is trying to, save their way to wealth, people with a rich mindset are learning how to leverage debt to acquire real estate and actual assets, often legally paying zero taxes in the process. It's a total game changer. Moving on to Section 2, focus on learning, not earning. See, true wealth really starts with acquiring skills, because working purely for a paycheck is a giant trap. The moment you accept that steady paycheck as your ultimate goal, you run the very real risk of becoming an employee in your mind, basically a slave to money. It stops your personal growth right in its tracks. To really paint a picture here, there's this fascinating story about a young writer over in Singapore. Now, she had a master's degree in English literature and wrote these beautifully crafted novels, but nobody was buying them. When she asked for advice, someone told her to go learn sales. Well, she was deeply offended. She felt that with her prestigious degree, she absolutely shouldn't have to stoop to learning sales. But then they pointed out a brilliant little detail. The title on the cover of those blockbuster books says best-selling author, not best writing author. Having a fantastic product or a fancy degree means absolutely nothing if you stubbornly refuse to learn new, uncomfortable skills like sales and marketing. So the fundamental contrast here is crystal clear. A poor mindset is hyper-focused on immediate gratification. Earning money quickly, doing the bare minimum to snag that paycheck, all while being completely terrified of making mistakes. Conversely, a rich mindset focuses on the long game. It's about acquiring diverse skills. Someone with a rich mindset doesn't view a mistake as proof that they're a failure. Nope, they see failure as absolutely necessary practice that eventually compounds into mastery over time. All right, Section 3, scarcity versus abundance mindset. Now, when we shift from those external financial rules to our own internal psychology, we see a massive difference in perspective. This is absolutely crucial. It's the difference between seeing the world through a lens of lack versus a lens of limitless opportunity. A scarcity mindset believes the pie is only so big, right? Like, if you get a slice, my slice gets smaller. It breeds jealousy, hoarding of knowledge, and this constant, exhausting fear of being left behind. An abundance mindset, on the other hand, believes there is always more to create. It shifts your thinking to, hey, we can both win. And this simple mental shift literally opens your heart. It allows you to stop bitterly comparing yourself to others and start actually creating real value in the world. And because of that abundance, we arrive at this incredible truth. Your internal economy is vastly greater than the external economy. People are constantly stressing over recessions or a bad economy. But the reality is, there's really no such thing as a bad economy if you have a rock-solid internal focus.
I mean, think about it. People who are terrified of losing their jobs usually end up losing them because their whole mindset is driven by fear. But a true entrepreneur with a rich internal economy, they adapt, they create new value, and they thrive entirely regardless of what the stock market or the outside world is doing. Let's transition into section 4, controlling your cash flow. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is that mindset is only step 1. You actually have to understand real cash flow to execute on this. This reveals the hidden mechanics of how money actually moves in our daily lives. So let's clearly define a liability. We so often think of our house or our car as our greatest assets, right? But remember this golden rule. Every liability on your balance sheet is an asset on the bank's balance sheet. That expensive mortgage or that shiny new car loan, they sit on the bank's side of the ledger as income-generating assets. If your hard-earned money is constantly flowing out to service these debts, you are trapped in the financial rat race, literally running on a hamster wheel just to make the banks richer.
And a massive contributor to this rat race is what we call unconscious spending. Get this. There's a story of a guy out to dinner with his friends. He had a perfectly fine, slightly older iPhone. It worked great. But when his buddy pulled out the absolute newest model and set it on the table, the guy suddenly felt totally inadequate and he went out to upgrade his phone the very next day. This perfectly illustrates how our social circles invisibly push us into regretful, unconscious spending. We buy things we don't even need just to impress people, driving our personal cash flow straight into the ground. To take back control, you have to understand what business you're actually in. Look at Ray Kroc, the guy who built McDonald's into a global empire. He once asked a group of university students what business they thought he was in. Well, they all laughed and said, selling burgers, obviously. But Kroc corrected them. His primary focus was selling burgers, sure, but his true wealth engine was real estate. McDonald's is one of the largest real estate owners on the planet because they own the land right under the franchises. So you have to ask yourself, are you just working your daily job, or are you actually minding your own business by acquiring real cash-flowing assets?
Which brings us to section 5, taking true personal responsibility.
Taking absolute ownership of your life means you stop complaining about a bad boss, an unfair system, or a bad economy. Sure, complaining might feel cozy in the moment, but all it does is give away your personal power. It all starts with how we talk to ourselves. Our subconscious mind literally takes our words as direct commands. When you look at something you want and say, I can't afford it, your brain just shuts down. It accepts defeat. But a rich mindset shifts that language into a question. How can I afford it? Just like that, your brain is forced to go to work. It starts hunting for creative financial solutions. It trains your inner strength and opens up a whole new world of possibilities, literally just by changing a few simple words.
Now, of course, there are going to be obstacles. Everyone fears losing money, but poor people never lose money simply because they never take the risk to invest in the first place. To grow, you might need to let your life or your portfolio be a little unbalanced initially to spur that growth. And most importantly, you absolutely have to lean into failure. Robert Kiyosaki tells this great story about a former coworker of his named John back at Xerox. John quit to start a business, he failed, and he came crawling right back to his safe paycheck. When Kiyosaki eventually left to start his own business, John told him he'd fail and be right back too. Kiyosaki's response? He looked at him and said, I might fail, but I am never coming back. That refusal to retreat to safety, that is exactly what forces you to get hungrier and smarter.
Finally, section 6, the real definition of wealth.
So, the crucial point as we bring this all together is that we need to redefine what we're actually chasing here. Getting rich isn't about hitting the lottery overnight or finding some magical shortcut. It's about a consistent, peaceful progression and deep personal growth. Long-term wealth building requires walking before you run. So first, you actively adopt that mindset of abundance and internal control. Second, you stop the unconscious spending and you take control of your cash flow and liabilities. And third, you take consistent baby steps. You don't need to make a massive leap tomorrow. It is the small, daily, calculated choices that over the years compound your knowledge and your finances into incredible wealth. And we have to acknowledge a truly profound psychological truth here at the end. True wealth is not ultimately measured by the digits sitting in your bank account. It's measured by freedom, by peace of mind, and critically, by gratitude. Gratitude acts as this gentle reset button for your brain. It immediately turns whatever you currently have into more than enough. It shifts you out of that panicky scarcity mode and right back into abundance, allowing you to just breathe and think clearly. So I want to leave you with this final, vital question to chew on today. Look at your daily habits, your job, your spending, and your mindset. Are you building your own wealth? Or are you just working hard every single day to build someone else's?
It is time to stop making the banks, the government, and your bosses rich at your own expense. Check the expiration date on those old beliefs, take ownership, and start building your own abundant future.